Hello, everybody. I want to discuss with you a subject that I find extremely important and interesting, which might in the beginning seem like a small matter, but as it will develop, you will see that it actually has to do with a much bigger picture regarding the way we study philosophy today in the 21st century and the state of our current academic institutions. The point is that we expect our academic institution to host a certain discussion about philosophical matters that is objective, and on this basis for us the subject. There's a huge decline in the study of philosophy, literature, and humanities in general in our time. Now, what I would want to argue is that the reason for this is not because people are losing interest in philosophy. On the contrary, I think that there is a huge need, especially in our generation, which contains so much lack and so much confusion about the human state, that it is not because people are not interested in it, but rather that the channels that are currently channeling these subjects and are currently handling these subjects are not giving to the people what they are looking for within the books, within the matter at hand. And even more so, I get the impression, which I will try to deliver to you through a few examples, that not only that this is not channeled to them properly, the channels in the current academic state regarding these subjects are deranged, are improper. And by this they are preventing from people things they need. Now, thankfully, we have today the ability of discussing these things in the current media that I am currently using now, which is YouTube. But YouTube is not the place to host such a discussion. The discussion eventually should be held in an institutional manner, because the institutions are there for that purpose. But in order for this discussion to be handled, questions must be raised. People must ask the questions. So first I want to give you a few examples that will maybe illustrate for you the kind of things I'm talking about. Okay? So let me show you a few oddities that I have noticed lately with regarding to the way philosophy is being taught today. And when you compare what is written about classical philosophers such as Immanuel Kant, such as Spinoza, and you compare to what the professors today are saying about them and what they really wrote, you find very odd discrepancies. You find very odd disagreements. Okay? You find it's not even disagreements. You find odd, simply sometimes opposite things between what the current professors are saying and what is written in the books. For comparison, if you will be learning biblical studies, and somebody will claim that he is a professor for biblical studies, and he will tell you that in the Ten Commandments it is written that thou shalt kill, you will find it odd. You will find it inaccurate at best, or you will simply find it preposterous or even deceiving if you will forget to mention that it is written, thou shalt not kill. But mainly you will find it ridiculous, especially in our time and age, in the 21st century, where things could be checked, and also your professors need to be checked, because in every science that is not mathematics, things must be questioned and also especially, also even in mathematics. If your professor will write to you 2 plus 2 equals 5, you will know that something is not okay, that something needs to be checked. Okay? So let's put things to the check and see whether the things written about Kant or written about Spinoza are really parallel and aligned with what they themselves wrote. And if we will find that this is a pattern, a continuous pattern, systematic, and even more so if this pattern represents an agenda, we should ask ourselves, what is going on? What is going on? Because it might be that the reason why students in the 21st century do not find interest in philosophy is not because philosophy is not interesting or that it does not have what to give them. It has a lot to give them. But maybe it is what they study is not the real thing. Maybe they are studying it through improper filters. And maybe what they are studying is not Kant. Maybe what they are studying is not really Spinoza. This should be checked out. Maybe they are studying what the filters are showing them. Maybe they are studying the ideas of a certain 21st century professor that is claiming to interpret Kant or is claiming to interpret Spinoza, but is actually giving them his own doctrine in the words of Spinoza and Kant by selectively showing them certain quotes and maybe even not showing them quotes at all and not explaining them how this is connected to the source. And that is why the source material must be properly studied by the students to be sure that what they are being told by their professors is indeed and truly the original ideas of the philosophers that they describe. So I want to give you 2 examples, and then we should ask ourselves the questions that these examples should lead to, and whether there is a pattern in these examples. Well, 2 examples is maybe not enough to see a pattern, but they are enough to make us ask ourselves whether certain questions need to be asked. And I assure you, there are more examples, but I'm just giving you a few. First of all, let's look here. We have here a book by Everyman Edition, the Everyman publication house, written by Schopenhauer. The World as Will and Idea. In their translations, The World and Will and Idea. It's called also The World as Will and Representation, and so on. And, of course, it translated from the German. But in this book, before the main essay by the main part by Schopenhauer, there is an introduction, and the introduction is written by Professor David Berman. Okay, he's a professor in Trinity College in Dublin, and it's written here. David Berman is Associate Professor of Philosophy and Fellow of Trinity College, Dublin. He is author of A History of Atheism, a book on the history of atheism, and various other books about philosophy. He is considered quite an authority. I checked his website, and it shows over 100 peer-reviewed published papers. Okay, it's a massive sum. And in this book, he writes a few summarizing words about the philosophy of Immanuel Kant. As far as I understand, he's also an expert about Kant. Okay, this specific book is about Spinoza. It's about Schopenhauer, but this way or the other, of course, Schopenhauer is sort of like a continuation, historical evolution of Kant's philosophy. Well, it's also a certain commentary slash to the way. Just a second. So the point is that this sentence by Professor Berman is very typical of the way in which Kant's philosophy is being taught in the academics today. As far as I remember when I was taught, that's rational way of dealing with metaphysical matters. Metaphysical being issues that have to do with God, issues that have to do with the nature of the soul, and issues that have to do with anything that is sort of non-corporal, materialistic, experimental, and so on. Okay, that's simply the way people teach about Kant. A very famous example is, I don't know how familiar you are with 20th century literature, but it's the example that is found in the beginning of The Master and the Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. And that is where Kant is described as being in hell, because he discredited the idea of God. Okay? So Kant is literally considered as the godfather of the scientific, enlightened idea of basing everything on rational, experimental, scientific method and denying any kind of metaphysical investigation in religious matters and so on. But the point is, and that is something unbelievable, and I remember the first time reading Kant by myself, that I was simply shocked by how different what he writes, what Kant himself writes on this subject, to what is being taught in the academy. It's actually contradictory. It's unbelievably contradictory. Actually, it's opposite. Because once you read the critique itself, and you can just read it in the introduction, in the preface to the first edition. Not only Kant does not say that he discredits the idea of any metaphysical investigation whatsoever. He actually says the opposite way around. He says that the purpose of his critique of pure reason is in order to purify the methods of thinking, the human methods of thinking, in order to qualify them exactly for this kind of metaphysical investigations. And it is actually the exact same examples that he gives about the nature of God and the nature of the soul that he defines as the ultimate goals of such a pure investigation based on his ideas. He actually literally defines it as the goal, the aim of the goal of the methods that he has laid down in order to offer exactly such a metaphysical science. Let me read you a bit. Let me just show you that it is so. Okay, so pay attention. How exactly did the current professors come to the idea that Kant says the opposite of what he is saying? That Kant says we cannot investigate into God, or we cannot investigate it into metaphysical ideas, while he says the exact opposite. Let's read some quotations, okay? I'm reading from the preface to the second edition of the Critique of Pure Reason, and this is from the Penguin edition, translated by Max Muller. Okay, for instance, he writes something on the line, according to the lines of as follows: "Hence I had to suspend knowledge in order to make room for belief." This is very different than what we hear in the academy. It's actually opposite. Kant wanted to make room for belief. That's his word. Okay? Just a moment. It says about metaphysics. Metaphysics, a completely isolated and speculative branch of rational knowledge, which is raised above all teaching of experience. and rests on concepts only, not like mathematics on their application to intuition, in which reason therefore is meant to be its own pupil. That is the way Kant views metaphysics. He finds it as a higher science, is to supply metaphysics with exactly this kind of methods that the scientific revolution gave to the physical sciences. That's quite unbelievable. It's not just unbelievable by itself, as the concept by themselves, but the gap between what Kant is saying once you open his book to what is being taught in the academy is simply unbelievable. By the way, Kant by himself gives a hint on what might justify such a contradiction. And again, I will not have now a few hours to explain the whole details of the critique, but I did make a parallel broadcast like this one in the Hebrew language, and there, if you are familiar with the language, you can see we have literally covered the whole introduction to the second introduction to the Critique of Pure Reason, and we've studied it word by word, and it's absolutely astounding what you see there, and the contradiction between what is being taught. He says here, thus and thus alone can one cut off the very root of materialism, fatalism, atheism, disbelief, and so on, and also skepticism. I'm sorry, does not come close. There's no connection between what Kant writes and what is being said. I'm sorry, he's talking about cutting atheism off, but you just said that he was. It just doesn't add up, and he does shed some light on what might explain what he's saying and what the schools are saying, or what the academy is saying, because he says that actually his book, once would be read, would cause a huge commotion and would actually be posing quite serious questions in front of the schools at his time. So you see, there's no better place to hide a book than in a library. And if you can control the opinion of people that people have on a certain book, then you can delay its effect. And that might well be what we're dealing with here. Because he says the main threat in his book is not for religion, it's for the schools. He writes it. He writes it in his own words. Now, the schools will not really be threatened. They just need to upgrade. They just need to really look into what is written there. And that's a very interesting issue. But one thing is clear. You do see a clear gap between what Kant is writing and the way it's being interpreted in our times by current professors in the academy. And by the way, it did not begin today. It began already quite in proximity to Kant himself. It has always been so. This interpretation of the Critique of Pure Reason, this almost I would say deceitful presentation of the Critique of Pure Reason is not a new thing, but it should be discerned that this is what we're dealing here. Okay? And we cannot allow ourselves. The point for me is not the metaphysical issue. I don't care for metaphysics. I just care for scientific objectivity. This way or the other. I don't care if you're secular or religious. I really don't care. But I do care for science. I do care for academic objectivity. And this is something that's simply unbearable. Something that we cannot allow. Academy is not made for agenda. It is made for science. It's made for pure scientific delivery of knowledge, and not for twisting things, for agendas. Pay attention that, as I told you, Professor Brim, he wrote a few books. He wrote a few books. One of them is called History of Atheism. I will be curious to know if he included Kant in this book, and whether he counts Kant as an atheist. Because if so, this will be again very surprising, because Kant, in his own words, wanted to cut off atheism. And again, I'm not going into religious wars here. I don't care for any of it. My concern is common sense. It cannot be because of religious fanaticism or anti-religious fanaticism, this way or the other. The academy will be taken hostage in order to justify one or the other agenda. Academy must be objective, and that's my only concern in this matter. Let's see another example. Not much less interesting, if not more. Okay, let's go to discuss Spinoza. You have here the following book, Think List of Death, Spinoza on How to Live and How to Die. This is written by Stephen Adler. Stephen Adler is a very good author and is considered today maybe one of the leading experts about the writing of Spinoza. He's also a professor. Let's see, he has a Wikipedia. So let's just go to the Wikipedia and take a look, okay? Just a moment. Okay, so let's have a look. Okay, Forged in Hell, Heretics, and so on. This is very much emphasized all throughout. And again, we cannot allow our institutions, our academic institutions, to be taken hostage neither by religious forces, but also by anti-religious forces to the other extreme. And by taking hostage, I mean being interpreted things through lenses that are unobjective, that have an agenda over things. This cannot be allowed. They must deliver to us the information properly, and especially in our time and age that we have the internet. It's simply preposterous. It's ridiculous to try to write that in a book is written X when actually it's written the opposite of X. So let's see. You see, there is here a short essay regarding Spinoza that is called Spinoza's Guide to Life and Death. Okay? And this is written by Stephen Adler not so long ago, October 2020. And he writes the following. The following part. Just a moment. Okay. So let's see the following sentence, which this really baffles me, okay? Because you see, this is written, again, in the website of the Princeton University Press. I don't think that there could be any more prestigious academic platform to host such a discussion, yes? And I would assume that it would hold into academic standards of evaluation and accuracy. Okay, this is simply must. Yes. Now let's see what is written here. We have here the following statement: for Spinoza, there is no immortal soul or self that persists beyond this life. This is a statement. Okay, just imagine that you will go to the website of Princeton University Press, and there will be explained a topic in mathematics, okay? And you will read a formula in mathematics, and during the presentation, you will see the formula 2 + 2 = 5. Won't it be disturbing to you? Won't you find that there is something seriously wrong in this? Won't you find it awkward? Won't you want clarifications on this matter? Okay? So for various readers, that might not be as alarming as 2 + 2 = 5. But let's see. When you're dead, you are dead. Okay? That is a claim by a current professor regarding Spinoza, written in the Princeton University Press website. The claim is a statement that for Spinoza there is no immortal soul all selves that persist beyond this life. When you are dead, you are dead. Okay? Now, I don't care for the metaphysics here. I don't give a damn about the metaphysics. I don't care. It doesn't interest me at all. And what I care is for academic scientific method, for academic scientific decency, accuracy, for the laws of common sense, for the laws of science. Now, why is it so alarming? Because let's go to Spinoza himself. Again, just like we done with Kant. Okay? And see what he has to say about it. Let's see what Spinoza has to say about the exact same matter. Okay? So, as you know, Spinoza's main book is the Ethics. Okay? That's his masterpiece. That's his philosophical masterpiece. Okay? Let's open the Ethics. And again, I'm reading from the Penguin Edition. This is translated by Edwin Crowley. Okay. Towards the end of the Ethics, which I maybe assume that the current professors assume that you will never reach. Maybe they think you will never read it. But once you open it, you open part 5, and you see proposition 23 in part 5 of the Ethics. It's towards the end of Spinoza's Ethics. Is written the following thing: the human mind cannot be absolutely destroyed with the body, but something of it remains which is eternal. Proposition 23. Very sorry. This is a direct contradiction to what the current biggest expert on Spinoza writes on the website of the Princeton University Press. This is unacceptable. This is simply unacceptable. Let's compare it again. And the fact that it is so the examples are so persistent in their nature, it really puts in a serious question mark. Why people that are writing about atheism and heretics and so on already rape Spinoza to be more heretic than what he was. That's not his words. You cannot put words in the mouth of Spinoza. You cannot do this. It might be your words, but you cannot associate them with Spinoza. For Spinoza, there is no immortal soul or self persists beyond this life. When you are dead, you are dead. So when you are coming to the university, and you're coming to the best universities in the world, and you are taught philosophy by certain professors, they are actually lying to you about what is written in the books that they claim to be experts. It's unacceptable. Just imagine that something like this would happen in medicine. And maybe it doesn't, we do not know. Imagine, here you see it in broad daylight. What happens in any other field? Except for maybe mathematics that you can follow, but maybe, who knows? That is unacceptable. Once you unweave the foundations of the scientific decency, the scientific laws, you unweave the whole fabric of our trust in our institutions. It's impossible to do so for agenda. How would I say? Atheism is turned into a replica of what it claims to be against. It has turned into a dogma. It turned into the thing it hates the most. It's turned into an anti-religious church. It's a disgrace. Again, look at the contradiction. Proposition 23 by Spinoza in the Ethics. The human mind cannot be absolutely destroyed with the body, but something of it remains which is eternal. So I don't know what is worse, that the biggest expert on Spinoza never read the Ethics, or that he read it and writes the opposite of what is written in it. I truly do not know what is worse. A conclusion from this proposition. I'm reading you again so that it will be a bit more detailed, what Spinoza is saying. As we have said, the idea which expresses the essence of the body under a species of eternity, just a moment. Therefore, we do not recall, so maybe you would say, no, it can be interpreted in all sorts of different ways. No, it's very clear here. Therefore, though we do not recollect that we existed before the body, we nevertheless feel that our mind, insofar as it involves the essence of the body under a species of eternity, is eternal, and that this existence cannot be defined by time or explained through duration. That are the words of Spinoza. Basically, he says that people feel that they have a certain level of eternal existence that exists without the body. Now again, I don't care for the metaphysics. You can accept it, you cannot, you can say that he's a mysticist or a philosopher, or that you accept it or not. Who cares? When somebody comes to study philosophy, he doesn't come to a church, he doesn't come to a religious indoctrination. He comes to study a text. And that's what you should have done. But when your anti-religious religion is already so fanatic that you need to censor books of Spinoza, that is already a real serious question mark on what is going on. And you see it's consistent. It's about Kant, it's about Spinoza, it's not no longer being just against the Bible. And I don't care. You can be against it. I don't care. But being against common sense. Censoring, like in Soviet Russia, books that are written by the philosophers that you claim to teach, just so that people will not see these things. So it's no wonder people are abandoning ship, that nobody wants to come to study philosophy. Who wants to deal with something like this? That a student, if I would have been a student in philosophy, and I would have seen my professor telling me lies, and I would ask him, Professor X, Professor Y, you are saying this, and I read in the book something else, and he will fail you in the course because you did not comply to him as a priest, as a priest officer, then nobody will cooperate with this. It's clear. You are destroying your own selves by this kind of handling of things. The intelligent students would leave, and nobody would stay. Abandon ship. Now you might be surprised to hear that, as you can see, there is a very big in the industry of preserving the image of Spinoza, of Benedict Spinoza, the philosopher Spinoza, as a heretic. It's really industry. And he was let's say like this. He was not exactly orthodox. Nobody will claim that he was an orthodox figure. And again, the books by Nadler are good. I enjoy reading most of them. I enjoyed them. They're very well written. He's a wonderful author. And maybe even he's doing this subconsciously. I do not know. I do not know to explain this. But I know what I see. And again, his books in every other respect, I do understand why he has reached such academic acclaim. And he deserves it. The books are good. I'm not coming to pass criticism and demolish just on the basis of one serious mistake. Okay? But there is an industry labeling Spinoza as the biggest heretic ever, that really invests in labeling Enlightenment, revolution, scientific. It contains another book inside it. And, okay, a full translation into the Hebrew language by an Orthodox rabbi of the first part of Spinoza's Ethics. This, in my eyes, is, in a normal world, groundbreaking Orthodox community. That is the first thing any student about Spinoza learns. That Spinoza has been banned, excommunicated by the Jewish Orthodox community. And that it is halachically, according to Jewish law, unallowed to keep his books by an Orthodox person. And here we have an authoritative Jewish figure, somebody that nobody can doubt, that is an authoritative, well-respected rabbi, that wrote a full book analyzing the ideas of Baruch Spinoza. This is nothing else than an earthquake in anything we know about the subject, because until today it is being taught that he has been excommunicated. There is even a professor that recently went to film a documentary regarding Spinoza and was banned by himself from entering the synagogue from which he was excommunicated in Amsterdam as a persona non grata. Everybody that you will ask will tell you that this ban is still on. And here we have a halachic book about Spinoza. Now, bear with me the kind of shock and the surprise that I experienced when I saw this book. No, unknown to any expert regarding Spinoza today. None of the professors that are leading figures about Spinoza know about the existence of this book. And it contains even interpretations regarding Spinoza's ideas, which is by itself mind-blowing. Deep insights about his whole scientific philosophical method. Deep insights. Try to ask yourself if in the current academic atmosphere, do you think that discussion about such a surprising find, do you think it has a place? Do you think the current academy is willing to host a serious discussion regarding the existence of this book? I invite you to ask yourself. I invite you to ask yourself if the real place for mentioning this, with all of the wonderful institutions that we have, is here on YouTube. I find it insane. But at least in my close circle, I have not yet found the proper channels inspire such a discussion. And I think it should be made, together with a few other related questions. Okay, so thank you very much for bearing this broadcast. And if you find it interesting, I urge you to disseminate it, to send it to other people, to make comments about it. I would be glad to hear if you have any input. Okay, feel free to comment on this broadcast, disseminate it, and